Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast here on the littleshaman.com, brought to you by Transrelational Healing, shamanspiritcenter.com, and littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that is very common when dealing with narcissists, and that is the bait and switch. For those who don't know, a bait and switch is a type of fraud. It's what it's called when you're promised something, but that's not what you get. Formally, it refers to merchants advertising or offering items that they don't really have, often at very low prices, in order to entice buyers into the store. Once they've got the person in there, they then claim that the item is sold out or otherwise not available somehow and try to pressure the person to buy something that is similar, but usually lower quality and or more expensive. It can also refer to advertising something at a lower price, but then when it rings up, that's not how much it is, and different things like that. It is illegal because it's fraud. Now, that's what it originally means, but the phrase bait and switch can refer to any situation where what someone is promised or sold is not what they get. If you've dealt with a narcissist or other antisocial personality, you can probably already see where this is going. That is the entire experience of dealing with narcissists. The presentation that you are sold is not what you have when you get home. What you are told you're being given is not what you end up with. A saying that is related to this is the cat's out of the bag. In the medieval marketplace, they used to sell live piglets in sacks that you could not see through. In an attempt to defraud people, dishonest merchants would put animals that should not be eaten in the bag instead. For example, cats. When people got home and they went to get the pig out of the bag, a cat ran out instead. Hence the saying, the cat is out of the bag, meaning that the fraud has been exposed. People would be inclined to take the merchant at their word and not look in the bag to prove it to themselves, not just because they trusted the merchant, but because opening the bag could result in the pig escaping, and pigs can be extremely difficult to catch. The pig might get away, and then the buyer would have to pay for it anyway. In that situation, it was really a case of you pays your money, you takes your chance. Though this phrase was originally related to a bait and switch type of fraud, we also use it to mean that a benign truth is now known, often specifically to mean that it was exposed by accident. You hear people say that all the time. Well, now that the cat's out of the bag, this is the thing, and it's something that's not that big of a deal. For example, a nice secret like a surprise party was inadvertently revealed by somebody, and now the surprise got spoiled. When it comes to narcissists and psychopaths, of course, the surprise is not nice. The fraud is very real, and it's very painful. And fraud is the right word. Fraud is defined as deceit or trickery of some kind with the intent of receiving a benefit for oneself, and it's predicated on the idea that the other person or people involved believe or rely on the information given or not given as being honest and truthful. It could be acting or failing to act. It could be things and information offered or things and information withheld. For example, someone not revealing that they were in prison at one point in their life or saying that they're divorced when they're not. When dealing with narcissists, this type of fraud is generally the norm. It's very common. Nothing promised is delivered. Nothing bought is what was actually sold. Nothing offered actually exists. Nothing is what it seems. The nice, sweet, considerate partner that someone thought they had in the beginning ends up being a cruel, callous, selfish abuser. The parent that everyone thought was so selfless and loving for most of their life is now revealed as a totally controlling, manipulative, punishing martyr. Narcissists are very often the complete opposite of what they pretend to be or say that they are, and the conflict around these two opposing things can be extremely confusing. People can be totally blindsided by it because even though they might have seen some red flags, there's almost no red flag that could alert someone to what's really happening here or how this is actually going to go. For example, the common red flags that we often hear about can't really prepare somebody for the amount of deception involved here or the amount and level of gaslighting and mistreatment that very often occurs in these situations. It's just not possible to imagine this for people who have not been through it. And even a lot of times for people when they're in it. And there really just aren't any red flags that could legitimately prepare a person for the first time that they ever see what's really going on. A lot of times people beat themselves up for that. And it's like, yes, maybe you saw some red flags, but did they make it possible for you to know that it was going to be this? No. Many people are just steamrollered by shock when this happens. It's too much. And compared to what they thought they had, just too different for most people to be able to absorb very well, especially all at one time. When trying to process what has happened, many people don't realize that this can produce a deep state of shock that can take quite a while to go through. So people need to make sure that they're cognizant of that and are not being too hard on themselves for not getting over things fast enough and things like that. It's going to take as long as it's going to take. Allow yourself to go through it naturally. It's hard and it hurts, but fighting the process only makes it take longer and it only makes it harder in the end. People who have been through this have generally been through something that is pretty traumatic. The impact of this kind of emotional whiplash cannot be understated. It is shocking. It is painful. It's disorienting. It causes issues with so many things. People's self-esteem, their self-image, their self-worth, their faith in themselves, in humanity, in love, in relationships, in institutions, in systems, in the way things work in the world. Many people feel shame for not having seen through the fraud or for not seeing it coming somehow, as if anybody ever could. The impact that this has on people can be enormous, and it should not be underestimated. It isn't just a breakup or just a divorce or just a family estrangement. It isn't just an annoying coworker or a neighbor that is weird and gets on your nerves. It isn't just sibling rivalry or parental favoritism or any of the other quote unquote normal dynamics that people are usually dealing with. This is a fraud on such a deep level that it often isn't really even comprehended by the people that it happened to, let alone anybody else. Even knowing that a person has no true self, for example, is not enough for people to understand the level of fraud and deception here. It is so deceptive and so fraudulent that the fraud can't even be detected very easily because it's so complete. And that makes sense. Any game looks straight if everyone is being cheated at once. And narcissists are cheating everyone they interact with. Everyone they interact with is being cheated and defrauded. They are even defrauding themselves most of all. It's so hard to see through, though, because in a way, there's nothing to see through. It's like saying you're seeing through air. It's just everywhere, all around you and in everything. The gaslighting in these situations is so complete and so omnipresent because the deception is omnipresent. This person lives in a different reality than you do, legitimately. This is not a one-time fraud either, like buying a cat instead of a piglet. This is an ongoing effort to sell you a cat in a bag and tell you it's a piglet every single second of every single day. Narcissists are the epitome of the toxic salesperson archetype. Everything they do and say is an attempt to sell something, usually an image of themselves, an idealized image. They are trying ultimately to sell this image to themselves, but the only way they can do that is by selling it to the people around them first. If you don't buy it, neither can they. You are the mirror that makes that image of themselves real. If you see it and you buy it and you believe it, then they can do those things too. But it's not just their image of themselves. Very often, everything from this kind of person feels like a sales pitch. They just keep talking and talking and pitching and selling and convincing and just really beating you to death with stuff. From what you should choose to watch on TV, to what you should have for dinner, to what political ideologies you need to subscribe to and what your opinion should be, and everything else in between and around and beside and behind. That's one reason it's so exhausting to be around these personalities after a while. Everything is a sales pitch of some kind, and you have to keep fending it off and keep saying no and keep making sure that you're not accidentally agreeing to some BS that you don't even know what it is. Every day, all day long. This person is systematically trying to force you to agree with and validate and condone and take into yourself everything they say all the time. And this is exhausting. Because narcissists have no true sense of self, they attach to other people to define themselves in comparison to or contrasting with that person. You having a different opinion or thoughts or whatever of your own is very threatening to them because of that. Anyone with a different opinion is a threat to theirs, but most especially if you are one of their main suppliers of their self-image, one of their main mirrors. Therefore, they have to keep at you nonstop, trying to force you and erode you and shove you into the way that they see things. It's the only way to nullify the threat. They have to eliminate it. If they can't do that, a lot of times they'll find what they're looking for somewhere else. They might not exit the relationship, but they will still be looking to find this elsewhere somehow. This is the way a bait and switch works. They offer you one thing, then they try to give you something different. They justify that somehow or simply try to gaslight you into believing that this is what they always said that you were getting, even though both of you know that that's not true. The reason for this is very simple. As we explored in the episode of the show called Narcissists Are Boring, narcissists are all sizzle and no steak. The reason they can't give you the thing that they originally offered you is because they don't have it. They have to try to use some other means, guilt, manipulation, fear, whatever else, to force you into accepting less because that's all they have to give you. For example, they offered you a loving relationship with another adult, and what you got is a forced caretaking situation with a cruel perpetual child. When you protest and you say, hey man, this is not what I signed up for and this is not what you told me this was going to be, they either insist that it is or that you're evil and cruel and stupid or whatever else because you won't take it. This goes for any type of relationship, family, partner, friends. It always ends up the same way. People who thought that they were in some kind of relationship with another adult who end up feeling forced into taking care of a perpetual child somehow and who are being told that they are wrong or bad because they don't want to do that. And to be clear, by taking care of, we don't necessarily mean paying for them or tying their shoes or making sure they eat their vegetables. This can happen, and it's not as uncommon as many people might think, but it's also stuff like regulating their emotions for them and anticipating their needs and being required to read their minds because they just won't say anything. Adults are supposed to be able to do all of these things for themselves. If you are expected to do them, you're being expected to take care of another adult, whether they realize that or not. The fact that they believe this is your responsibility says a lot. For instance, if you are expected to make and do and be and have and keep everything perfect so that this person never feels offended or hurt or angry or upset, if you're told that they're not responsible for their behavior because they're just reacting to you, if you are blamed for their behavior and how they feel, if you're blamed for not somehow preventing their emotional responses, these are examples of being expected to regulate another person's emotions for them. That is not acceptable in relationships with other adults. This dynamic is essentially a setup from the beginning because it can't succeed. It's not going to work. You will never be able to behave so perfectly and manage the environment so carefully that the other person never feels any negative emotions, especially because when you're dealing with narcissists, they have other mental health problems that are contributing to the situation immensely, enormously. Even worse, this dynamic makes it possible for narcissists to continue to ignore their own very serious mental health issues because they can just keep saying that they have no mental health issues or any other kind. You are the problem. And if you stopped being such a failure or an idiot or a loser or whatever else they're saying you are, everything would be fine. They are not to blame here for anything, ever. It's all you or whoever the bad guy is, and that's final. This does not mean that you are responsible for their failure to acknowledge their own issues, of course. That is 1000% their responsibility, whether they take it or not, whether they know that or not. But there is no need to make it easier for them or to participate in this more than is absolutely necessary. As we explored in Narcissists Have No True Self, narcissists do not have a fixed and stable identity. They have an idealized image of themselves instead. This is what they bait people in with. This is what they offer as being available to other people. It's not. It doesn't exist. They can play a role for a time, but that's all. And like all performances, it has holes in it that can be seen through if we really look. People often ask why narcissists bother with all this fakery and all this subterfuge. To put it simply, the reason is that this is all they have. Identity is not just about doing, it's about being. They tried to do the doing, but since they can't do the doing does not work out. It's an act, and that's all it is. A person cannot play a role forever. Whatever they really are comes out. For example, doing the things that a caring person would do will not fool others for long if you're not actually a caring person. You will miss too many things, or you're going to make too many mistakes, because in a truly caring person, the doing is a natural result of the being. People don't even have to think about it. In a person who is just trying to act, just trying to do the doing, in other words, without being the being, there will be situations where the act fails. Narcissists often tell on themselves in exactly this way without realizing it. They don't know what they don't know, but they're too arrogant and self-focused to realize that. This is where the switch becomes known. This is where the cat gets out of the bag. People start to realize what they actually have, and it is not what they thought it was. They start to realize that they've been deceived, they've been defrauded. Whether this is the narcissist's conscious intention from the beginning doesn't matter. That's what has happened, and that's how it feels to the other person. This is a betrayal on a level that many people did not even realize can happen. A whole person can be a fraud. Not just in the sense that they're posing as somebody that they're not, even though they are doing that, but in the sense that the fundamental reality of who this person is, the fact that they're even a whole person at all, is an illusion. This calls into question for many people everything they believe in, everything they understand about their own perception, about reality itself, everything. In one fell swoop, everything someone thinks they know about reality and life itself can be shaken by this. That is the impact this can have on somebody. It's beyond the basic impacts of abuse or cheating or lying, which are horrible in and of themselves. This impacts the very fabric of a person's reality, and it is a very big deal. Many people don't realize how big of a deal it is until much later, and people who have not dealt with this don't understand it at all. This is a fraud of the mind, of the body, of the spirit, of the soul. It is the biggest deception, a betrayal on a level that cannot even be understood sometimes until years later, because it is so large and so deep. It can literally be too big to see. This is the crux of the bait and switch with narcissists. You are being offered something valuable that does not exist by a person who has no ability to give it to you, and who is going to instead try to force you to accept something of much lesser quality that is much more expensive. Don't settle. Insist on what you were told you were getting, and walk away immediately from relationships where people cannot or will not provide that. When a person's words don't match their actions, when their actions don't line up with what they claim to be, when what they claim to be doesn't match up with who they are, and when who they are does not line up with what you need, it's time to look somewhere else for what you're looking for. As we always say on this channel, you can't get groceries at Home Depot. You can't get groceries at Home Depot because they don't have groceries there to give you. And no matter how much you want them to or wish they did, they don't, and they never will, because it's not the kind of place where you can get that. What does this mean in this situation? It means you're not asking for too much, you're asking the wrong person. You're looking in the wrong place. It can be hard to accept that you're not going to get what you wanted from this situation, especially when it's a parent or a relationship in which you have invested a lot of time and energy. But if someone can't do a thing, then they can't do the thing. And investing more time and energy into it is not going to change the reality of that. Nothing will. It is what it is. Sometimes, even when you really try, you still lose. Sometimes, even when you do your best, you still fail. Sometimes, even when you really want something or when you even deserve it, you still don't get it. That's not negativity, it's reality. Some things are just a waste of time, and trying to force people to change or to be different who don't want to change and don't think they need to be different is one of those things. Accepting this part of the situation is about accepting that no matter how much you might wish it were different, there are some things that you just can't do anything about. Sometimes people don't like to hear that there's nothing they can do about something, or they don't want to believe that, but that doesn't change the reality of the situation either. It is what it is, and the sooner we can accept that, the less painful this is in the end. Considering how painful these situations are in general, any way that we can find to reduce the pain for ourselves is necessary, even if it's difficult in the moment. When someone has defrauded you, when they're defrauding everybody, including themselves, there's nothing else to do in this situation except accept that that's what's happening and move forward with that information. It's not easy and it's very painful, but it's better than the other options available to you in this situation. I hope that clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. I take appointments online, over the phone, via text, via messenger, via email, and through Skype and Zoom worldwide. So if you are interested in speaking with me one-on-one about this or anything else, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. I have several books out for publication, including a new one on narcissists, dealing with narcissists. You can pick a copy up of that or any of the others from Amazon.com or littleshaman.org. I teach workshops, seminars, and clinics. So if you are interested in seeing what we are running this month, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. And if you're interested in joining our support group with weekly support meetings, access to exclusive content, and more, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that as well. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast here on thelittleshaman.com, brought to you by Transrelational Healing, shamanspiritcenter.com, and littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you. Have a beautiful day.
If you've been struggling through dealing with or recovering from an unhealthy relationship with a narcissist or other toxic personality, the Little Shaman has a catalog of over 500 YouTube videos designed to support your journey from discovery to recovery. You can also find additional resources on the Little Shaman website, including tools, courses, workshops, a support group with weekly meetings, and one-on-one appointments with the Little Shaman that are open to clients worldwide. There's even an AI chatbot built and trained exclusively by the Little Shaman using her work that can answer questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For more information, visit littleshaman.org. You can listen to The Little Shaman wherever you find your favorite podcasts.